welcome to today's episode of Booked. I'm your host, Saffron Asteria, and I'm joined today by Zoje Stage. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm absolutely thrilled. I've been so excited about this for however many weeks that we've had this plan. So thank you again so much for being here. I'm really excited to talk about you and your work and your experiences. So for the benefit of those who haven't read any of your works before, could you tell us a little bit about what kinds of things you write?
Sure. Yeah. So I have written primarily psychological horror and psychological thrillers, but I have also veered into some more quirky work, like The Girl Who Outgrew the World and My Underslumber Bumblebeast, which is actually the children's book that's featured in both Baby Teeth and Dear Hannah. So that's what I've kind of written for the past many years, but I'm starting to branch out a little bit now, like into eco horror. I have a kink novel coming out next year. That's different.
Oh, why not?
Yeah. So, yeah. I like to explore human behavior in all sorts of forms, and I like to really be able to use my imagination as wildly as I may want to.
Well, that's the beauty of writing fiction, isn't it? Is that you can literally do anything you want to.
Yeah, definitely.
So, how long have you been writing fiction? Has it been a majority of your life? Has it been a more recent thing?
Yeah, so I started out actually wanting to pursue a career in film. So I wrote screenplays for decades, and I didn't start writing novels until I guess it was the very end of 2012. And Baby Teeth, which was the first novel I sold, was actually the sixth novel I'd written.
Oh, wow.
And that sold in 2017. So I consider like that's the point where I became a professional writer, and I've been writing novels for 4 to 5 years prior to that. And then before that, I was writing screenplays and all sorts of other things. I mean, I've always written stuff, but honestly, I was really intimidated for a long time about trying to write a novel.
Why were you so intimidated by it? Was it the length of them, the whole trying to sell it and get representation thing?
No, it was actually just the work of a novel itself, of the length of it, of the complexity of it, of not being sure entirely what all you put in a novel. You know, coming from a background more into like filmmaking and writing screenplays, I would think very visually. And I'd be like, okay, this is going to be the image, and then this is going to be the image. And I understood storytelling in that capacity. But to think in terms of like, oh my God, how do I write an entire novel worth of a story? It was very intimidating. So I put it off for a long time, but I'm so glad I finally got brave enough to write a novel.
I'm also glad. Because I super look up to you as a writer, and my gateway book was Baby Teeth, and I found it in a secondhand bookstore in the horror section, and I saw the cover and I saw the title, and I didn't even read the blurb. I just went, I'm picking that book up because that sounds like it's probably going to be deeply creepy. And I was right. And I must have torn through that in maybe 2 days. I couldn't stop reading it. And what I love about your writing is your ability to like seamlessly include multiple points of view, and they're not like everybody has like a distinctive voice, and it works really well because not everyone can do that successfully.
Hard. Yeah, that's a very hard thing to do because you know these characters are coming from your own brain. They need to be different. They need to each be their own person, so that is challenging. But thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, so I find because I interview a lot of indie writers, self-published writers, and a lot of people, because I'm in a lot of like Discord groups and things like that, and one of the most common questions is it okay to have multiple POVs in a book, which I find really interesting. And I wonder if it's this fear of not being able to execute it very well. But is it something that you were just naturally quite good at, or did you have to really work on that as a skill?
You know, that's something I've actually really debated as a writer. Because I don't always love to read books with multiple POVs, which I know is a weird thing to say, but you know, I've read books where it's like I'm reading one character, I'm so into it, I want to see what happens next, and you turn the page and it's a different character's chapter. And, I have read books where it's like, oh, it's 5 different characters, like, in a
Mhm.
row in different chapters, and I will get very invested in one character and want to know what is happening with them. So,
Mm.
I've not yet written a book that was more than 2 POVs,
Mhm.
and I think some of that does come from just my own idea of what I like to read, that I wanna be invested. I'd rather be more invested in a smaller number of characters than less invested in a large number of characters.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I probably read quite similarly, and that's why, like, I say this all the time on the show, and it's not no disrespect to like fantasy books at all, because there are some that I really like, but when the cast of characters is really, really large, you never really get that good balance of, getting to know them very well, unless the book is like this thick, in which case I can't, my arms get tired. I don't want to hold up a book that's that big. But yeah, I think that's
And it's
probably.
also a bit
Mm.
confusing, and I
Yeah.
get confused easily, and it's like, I like to read for fun. I don't wanna be confused. I don't wanna have to look at the list of characters at the front of the book, though I have definitely done that for things, but,
Mhm.
I wanna just read, like, with no distractions. I just wanna read it.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm the same. I don't really like homework with my leisure choices. Oh dear. So I told you just before we started recording, but I finished Something of a Calling like just before we got onto this, and it arrived maybe 2 days ago. And the first night, I tried to read it, and I was so tired. It was nothing to do with the book, but I was so tired, and I read maybe a couple of pages. And then last night, I was wide awake because I was so invested in what was going on. And then I was like, I have to go to sleep. And so I read the rest this morning. But it was fascinating. And I love a shorter book. And you managed to pack in like a lot of stuff. And now I feel guilty um, for my behavior in the world after reading this book. And so like this obviously is an example of the eco horror that you're working on, and it works. I feel really guilty. I'm like looking around my house going, what have I done wrong?
Oh,
um
no.
but it's good. I think it's important to make people aware of their behaviors and stuff. But so I read in the acknowledgements that a lot of the story was born out of your experiences and being around animals, and obviously your empathy towards them. Was that what you set out to do, and then you shaped the story around that, or did they kind of like come together?
Yeah, no, it was very, very much inspired by the animals who come and visit me in my backyard. And for the record, I live in the city. I'm not out in the country somewhere. I live in the city.
Mhm,
But the back of my house happens to be right up against, I mean, maybe an acre. It's not a huge
mhm,
area, but it's kind of this hilly, like you can't build anything on it. So it's just this little wild space.
mhm,
And to see how the natural world will try to take over any little bit of natural space that it gets,
mhm,
and the interactions that I've had with these animals. I mean, I know for the most part they don't care, but it's extremely meaningful to me. And it's like I follow their lives and when they have their
mhm,
babies, and like it's extremely, extremely meaningful to me. And
mhm,
it made me like feel like, oh my, I owe these creatures some level of safety. And I
mm,
get very frustrated and hurt when I can't give them like the world that I think that they deserve.
mm,
So, in a lot of ways, I know this is weird, but in a lot of ways, Something of a Calling is my most personal book
mm,
because I just feel so, so emotionally attached to what is happening
mhm,
to the animals and wildlife and nature on this earth, that
mhm.
it's like I really needed to write that book. It was like really important to me.
Hmm. Was mm, how am I going to phrase this? How much of yourself did you put into Something of a Calling? And by that I mean like your personality and personal beliefs, because obviously it's like reflective in the choices that some of the characters make, but are you in it quite a lot?
I would say I'm me as a person,
Mhm.
that I'm not in it that much.
Okay.
I say me as some of my philosophies about things are.
Mhm.
I think the characters are very much their own people.
Mm.
I know that just the nature of writing, you know, every single person and every writer is an accumulation of every experience that they've had and everything that they've read and seen and thought about over their whole lives. So naturally, the things that you write about are an extension of all of this material that you've absorbed over time. So in
Mhm.
that sense, there's always bits of me, but it might be hard for me to like pinpoint exactly what they are.
Mm.
But definitely some of the philosophies about how we humans are functioning on this earth and our real imperative that we need to do better, that part is definitely very, very personal.
Mm. So what are you hoping that people are gonna get out of this book?
I hope it's been interesting because the arcs are out, and
Mhm.
I always I do read early reviews. I know people always say don't read your early reviews. I read them because I find it very interesting to find out, at least at the beginning, how readers are reacting to something.
Mhm.
And it has honestly, it's been very rewarding because there are definitely a lot of people who are like, wow, I feel bad. Like, oh, I think I'm on the wrong side.
Mhm.
Um, I want people to think about that because I
Mm.
do really believe that, you know, we don't, nature isn't something that's somewhere else.
Mhm.
We're in it. It's all around us, and we need to be able to cohabitate with all of the living things around us. And that has not been the philosophy of the entire history of human history.
Mhm.
Human history has been we're dominant, we're going to kill what we want, we're going to destroy what we want because we're kings of the hill.
Mhm.
And it's not sustainable in any way. And it's also cruel. I mean, it's cruel. And increasingly, people understand, anybody who's ever had a pet knows your pet has feelings.
Mhm.
Your pet can mourn. And I just feel as a human species, and especially since we do have the brain power, that we really need to be aware of and considerate of and forward thinking in terms of how we interact with the entire world around us.
Mm. No, I so agree with you. And just I promise this is relevant. Have you lived in any other country other than the US?
I've not lived elsewhere.
Okay. Have you spent like time outside the US though?
A little bit.
Okay. So I'm from my accent, you can probably tell I'm British and I live in Texas. Strange. Very, very different, different thing altogether. And something that I noticed being in the US is how disposable uh, the earth feels
Mm.
compared to the way that it was treated in my local area in Europe. Like it's just baffling to me actually. There's a lot more waste and it was weird seeing like plastic straws. It's just things like that. It's just such a peculiar thing to me. And it's something that it's made me more aware of my like plastic usage and things like that because I was, told from fairly early in my life that you shouldn't be using things like that as much anyway, and because of like EU regulations and things like that, it's not something that I was really exposed to. And seeing things like styrofoam food containers, I was like, well, I haven't seen one in years, and it was just so baffling to me that such an advanced and wealthy country still can't figure it out. It's awful.
Yeah. I mean, I would say in terms of this country, not to get like totally political, but this country runs on the theory of making money and that the people who make the money get to do whatever they want. And
Yep.
they decide, like, oh, this is what's convenient for you. So we
Mhm.
want all the plastics people and all the cardboard people and all the packaging people to make money. So every item you buy is going to come in 12 containers that you have to undo. It makes me insane.
Mhm.
I'll get something and I'm like, oh my God, the unwrapping and the this and the that just to get to the thing.
Mhm.
So ungodly wasteful. But
Yeah. Individually wrapped fruits and vegetables drive me absolutely nuts because they come with a wrapper. they grow with a wrapper on them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, honestly, reading this really made me think. I wonder if it would have impacted me exactly the same in the exact same way had I have not moved here and seen how people live differently than. I'm not saying that Britain's perfect in any way. Like, there's obviously still like trash and blah blah blah. But yeah, it was just an interesting thing for me to. I'm still stewing on it because I've only just finished it. But I'm sure it's probably going to sit with me for a while, and I'll be recommending it to people who I know need to read it.
Thank you. We live in a very wasteful, very destructive society.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, it makes me insane. Like, sometimes I literally think, how can I live knowing this is how we're doing everything?
Mm-hmm.
It makes me crazy. So I don't know. I hope, to get back to your question about what people should get from the book, I hope that some number of people, I know it won't be everyone, but that some number of people just become really aware in a way that they maybe didn't. Because it is very easy to just take for granted where you live and what's around you, and you live in a city, and but we're still in the middle of nature. We don't own the planet, and we don't own a city. We don't own the oxygen. We don't own the soil. We don't own any of this. So I hope it makes people think a little bit like, wow, we need to do better. Because as with so many things, like, if people could advocate on a local level, that maybe they could start to make some changes in their own little area.
I think that's something that is really a key to making any sort of change, is what happens in the local community. Because to take on like a huge monolith, like, I don't know, the packaging industry, for example, we're not going to be able to do anything about that at an immediate level. But making those small changes, those incremental changes, are what changes like policies and processes and things like that. So maybe it will instill a sense of community as well.
I hope so. I mean, one of the things that's just driven me absolutely insane here in Western Pennsylvania, we have a huge number of white-tailed deer. And I have deer in my backyard. Probably everybody in Pittsburgh probably has deer that goes through their backyard. So the city and the parks felt like we have too many deer because, of course, they have no predators. It felt like the deer were eating too many native plants and that they were damaging the parks. So they came up with this brilliant idea to deal with the deer population of allowing hunters in our local family parks to go and kill deer, which they do now for many, many months out of the year. And that's why I'm like, this is what we do as humans. We create a problem that we have created, and then we find a solution that involves killing more things. Instead of, I realize it would cost more money to come up with another solution. It would be harder to come up with another solution. Solve the problem that was created by killing all the predators. Now we'll just kill all the animals that are left. We can't just live like this. This is not right.
I wish we could just give in and let them take over. Because I remember during COVID, because the lockdowns in Europe were like really, really, really strict. And I cannot for the life of me remember where it was, but there was a town, at least one anyway, in England, where the sheep decided that they were going to just take over. And there were just like tons and tons of sheep everywhere. And I thought, what a lovely place to live. I wouldn't mind that. I'd be happy with that.
There's a documentary, it's on Apple TV, and it's about that, and it takes place in different places all over the world, about the animals that came out, sort of like came out of where they were and moved into other areas and started behaving like more of the world was theirs because humanity had retreated. I wish I knew what it was called. It's on Apple TV.
I'll look for it.
It's a documentary. It'll be with like the animals and wildlife things. And it's an amazing, it's a beautiful documentary. And it gives you a little bit of hope that if humans could just pull back a little bit, we really could make more space and a better life for the creatures we live here with.
I'm going to have to look that up. I think that sounds fabulous. Yeah, if I could just have a bunch of animals around me, I'd be fine. I'm not that bothered about people, if I'm being totally honest, like not terribly bothered about them. Arm's
Mhm.
length is fine, but surrounded by animals,
Yeah,
I'm
I
into
agree.
it. So, going back a little bit to your screenwriting days, I've spoken to actually a handful of writers who have either dabbled in writing screenplays or and writing scripts, or they just do it for fun, or they did it for a long time and then moved on to novel writing, things like that. Do you find that having that skill has helped you to write novels? I know that you sort of touched on it before, but like in what other ways has it helped you to do that?
Yeah, it absolutely helped me. Because by the time I came to writing novels, even though I was intimidated by it,
Mhm.
I did have a sense for writing a story with an arc from beginning to end.
Mm,
Writing something that was basically more or less a three-act structure, though I'm not an analytical writer. I don't, work by individual beats or page numbers or anything, but I
mhm,
definitely had a sense of the flow of writing a character and writing a story from beginning to end, which is a really important thing to be able to do. I know it just sounds so simple and so, well, of course you have to do that. But if you haven't done that before and you're working on a very long project, it's really hard.
mhm.
It doesn't just come automatically. So
Mhm.
it helped a lot that I had that as a background.
Mhm.
So even though, I didn't know all of the things yet that I needed, like how much dialogue do I need? How much description do I need? How much internalization did I need? Because these were all kind of different from writing a screenplay.
Mhm.
But I still had a sense for what a complete story looked like.
Mm. Yeah, I can imagine that would be immensely helpful, and a lot of writers that I've interviewed, spoken with, whatever, um, I find that those who have had experience in different, mm, sort of forms of writing actually have a more well-rounded storytelling ability. For example, when I speak to poets, I can tell that they write poetry because of the way that their prose is structured and things like that. And it's just really interesting to see those who go, no, I'm just going to write a novel. That's all I'm going to do. And actually, if you just expanded your horizons, you just develop skills and it's going to be helpful. And most forms of writing, whether you're like a journalist or, whatever form that may take, there's always something to be taken from it that you can apply to like fiction writing. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
I used to do theater and I wrote plays. I also studied acting.
Oh, wow.
I write poetry. I wouldn't say I do it terribly well, but especially with the theater stuff and the acting stuff, like when I'm writing my characters, like I will almost like act out their parts. Like I want the
Oh,
dialogue
wow.
to be a certain way. I want them to seem like this is how a real person would say something.
Mm,
Because I do have sort of a background in acting and theater, it's like I could sort of know like what the rhythm of that would be then translating it as you read it.
mhm,
Because of course the way people talk, you take a lot more time and have a lot more words to say
mhm,
something. And in a book, you need to be a little bit more concise than that.
mm,
So I still want it to feel natural. So yeah, I use all of my experiences, and
mm.
it is very helpful.
Do you think you do that consciously, or is it just part of your makeup now?
At this point, I think it's part of my makeup.
Mm,
Um, I create very organically. I'm not great at analyzing things.
mhm,
So I really need to have absorbed whatever my understanding is of how to tell a story. It really needs to be deeply absorbed,
mhm.
because it is hard for me to like after the fact try to analyze it.
Yeah,
So yeah, but
yeah.
but definitely for things like dialogue though, I mean that is very intentional. Like
Mhm,
saying the lines and doing that.
mm. So one of the questions that I was gonna ask you is, I love your characterization and your ability to give us just enough of that person's personality through, like, a little bit of inner monologue and things like that. Um, do you think that that is because you sort of studied acting and you do this method of like talking your scenes out loud and things like that?
I'm not sure. I think some of it with my characters, even characters that people may not like,
Mhm.
it comes from a place of actually having a lot of empathy for them.
Mm.
So it's like I really imagine how they experience things. And I do think it's why a lot of my characters work in that sense,
Mhm.
because they're not strictly evil or they're not strictly good. They're well-rounded because I believe everybody has these elements of good and evil, and
Mm.
we make mistakes, we do things right. I mean, we're all just really complex and we have these opposites in us. And I definitely think about that when I create characters
Mm.
because I have empathy for them and I want them to feel, to me, they feel like real people.
Mhm.
And I want other people to, readers to be able to experience the reality that not just characters, but that people have this complexity
Mm.
and that they might have something lurking inside them or in their thoughts or in their past that maybe you don't know, but if you knew it, you would actually realize, oh, wait, I do have empathy for this person.
Yeah. I think that definitely speaks to a more well-rounded character because I'm thinking about villains specifically right now, and I don't actually like empathizing with villains. I like my villains to be, like, really evil. But I also like to understand why they're really evil. Like, you don't have to like them, but having this understanding of, like, why people do the things that they do fascinates me, and that's kind of why I like doing these interviews because I wanna know, like, what motivates you and what do you find exciting and why do you write the things that you write, because it makes the process of reading a story more enjoyable to me. That's why I started doing this in the first place. Partially selfish. It's quite a bit of it selfish. I'm a little bit nosy as well, that doesn't help. But in order for you to have this like deeper understanding of your characters and the way that they function, have you studied anything along the lines of psychology? Do you intentionally seek out, a better understanding of how people work, or is that just something you naturally know about people?
No, that is definitely something I seek out, and I
Mm.
seek it out mostly in the form of documentaries.
Mhm,
I like to see real people, and I like to see what they do, and I like to see how they behave, and
mhm,
I like to try to piece together how did they get that way.
mhm,
You're right. It is really fun to do that with the villains because it's sort of the most obvious of like, wow, how did this person get like this?
mhm,
But I don't watch as much true crime anymore. I used to watch a lot of it.
mhm,
But part of my interest in it was understanding like how did this chain of events come to happen?
mhm,
It's fascinating to me. And just to look at villains in history and be like, how did this happen? And when it's something like leadership, I will name no names. People fall in line behind that. What is the psychology and the need of what drives people to fall in line with that?
mhm,
And it's not ever really just cut and dried. It's always, I think, comes back to some very universal things about being a human being
mm,
that just sometimes manifest really badly.
mhm,
But at the end of the day, I do also believe people do the best they can, even when they're making horrible decisions,
mm.
with the exception of people who are absolutely narcissistic psychopaths. I name no names.
I don't think you need to name the names. No, that's something that has always really fascinated me actually is I studied psychology like late in life. So I studied it in like my late 20s. And one of the key things that we learned in like the very beginning of this the studying that I did, it was terribly structured, but we're going with it. You understand the words I'm saying, it's fine. Um, was why do we walk on the pavement? Why do we stop at a stop sign? Why do we do these things? It's just because it's the way that we've always done it. It's because this the structure of society. And then I think the fascinating part comes when people don't do those things. And it's like, why would you run a stop sign? Why would you walk in the middle of the road? And it's just fascinating to find those quirks in people because sometimes it's just like, okay, well, they're just a free person. They're just doing what they want to do. And sometimes it's because they don't believe in those rules. And sometimes they're, against something or whatever the thing may be. And people are just absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. One of the most helpful things I ever learned about human behavior was actually in an acting class.
Hmm.
And I can't remember, I had the opportunity to do a piece of Richard III as Richard III,
Okay.
which is really interesting.
Mm.
Um, and one of the things I had learned, which for me at the time was a revelation,
Mhm.
was that, when you're approaching a character, especially one who's perceived as being an evil character, like Richard III,
Mhm.
keep in mind that every person from their own perspective is not evil. Every person from their own perspective has justified reasons for why they're doing the things they're doing.
Mhm.
From the outside, we may look at that and say, that's insane.
Mhm.
But to actually think about, okay, how is this person rationalizing this
Mm.
is really, really interesting.
Mm.
And it
Absolutely.
definitely helped in terms of, yeah, nobody thinks of themselves as evil. And it's really true. Nobody does think of themselves as evil.
Apart from cartoon villains.
Right. Maybe a few serial killers. I don't know.
Maybe. But then I don't know, but then are they excited by that? There's got to be some like reward for doing it, whatever the case may be. But that's something I try and tell people when, because I mean, we all get frustrated in life, and we all come across people that we don't really get on with or that we don't like. And one of the best things that I tell myself or tell other people that are getting frustrated is they think they're doing the right thing, and sometimes that's all it takes for you to be like, okay, because not everybody's going to do the thing that you want to do or behave in the way that you want them to behave. And that's kind of good. Like makes life interesting. It makes us able to solve different problems and have different perspectives. And yeah, it's one of the easiest ways of being able to be okay with stuff that's going on that you're not happy with. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely having coping skills to deal with. I don't know. I feel like I'm running out of coping skills. I feel like 2026 has not been a good year for coping skills. I'm being pushed to the edge every day is like a new nightmare. And I'm running out of ways to be patient about things that I hate. So I probably can't really speak to that right now.
I hate how relatable that is. Oh yeah, I get it. Sometimes sometimes you just gotta go, oh well, I can't care about this because I haven't got the energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I just have, I never used to be functioning on a level of like, I hate this person or
Mm,
I hate all of these people. And it's bad. That's like a bad way to be. But I
mm.
just get so angry sometimes and I don't have great coping skills for 2026. So
Yes.
that's my admission.
I feel like I need that on a mug. I don't have good coping skills for 2026. I think it perfectly sums up the American experience, if not more worldwide.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So, backing up away from that topic because I was scared of saying something wrong.
I know.
Um,
I'm trying to just like hold it in. Don't say it.
we can wait until after the recording. It's fine. Oh, anyway, so do you ever find yourself without inspiration or struggling to think of a story to tell?
Oh God. Well, ironically,
Is it now?
not unrelated to everything we just talked
Mhm.
about 2026, I'm really struggling to write this year.
Hmm.
Like, and this is really the only year that I've ever struggled to write because
Interesting.
there's this element that's like, I don't want to like depress people, but there's
Mhm.
this element sometimes that I'm like, what's the point? And honestly, again, I don't want to depress people, but I've been really depressed this year.
I'm sorry
So
to hear
it's
that.
been really hard to I don't know, just to focus, to be
Yeah.
that engaged in something that seems trivial compared to what's happening in the world.
Mm,
So yes, that applies to right now, but ordinarily, I might take little breaks between writing things,
mhm,
but I'll always be anxious to get back to writing something and
mhm.
explore something. And now I'm just like, what's meaningful enough to explore? And
Yeah.
I'm just not sure right now.
I'm sure that there are going to be, including myself, people who can relate to that. And I'm sorry that that's something that you're also experiencing because it's sucky. But I think some of the most beautiful things in terms of art have come from the most terrible of times. And perhaps you'll find some inspiration in the near future to help you use it as a tool.
I hope so. I hope so. Because the other thing is, which is just making it all worse, is like my way of coping with things usually
Mhm.
is right. Like
Yeah.
that's the thing that keeps me centered and keeps me sane. And
Mhm.
so I know I'm like, oh my God, I would be less depressed if I was writing, but I don't know what to write. And so, yeah, but I need to get it together. The winter is over now. It's finally like sunshine and a little bit better. So I'm hoping I can mentally um, be a little brighter now.
I no, the weather is a real thing. Like being in Texas, I've always struggled with depression, and being here weirdly is way better because it's constantly sunshiny. Sometimes too much so. Like I cook out in the sun. It's crazy. It's like 15 degrees Celsius higher than I'm used to. But it really does make a huge difference.
Absolutely.
Huge difference.
Absolutely.
It's wild. But yeah, I mean, I hope that you don't ever feel guilty for not being able to produce anything. I hope that's not something you deal with.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I'm not feeling guilty.
Good.
I do have some concerns
Hmm.
because this is how I make my living.
There is that.
So technically, I'm not working, and it's like okay. So there is that, but I also have enough projects
Mhm.
that are in the pipeline that are going to be published that I'm like, okay, there's stuff that's going to be published even through 2027. I know that that's happening. So I feel like I have a little window of grace to get my shit together and
Mhm.
figure out something
Yeah.
worth my investment.
Well, that's the thing as well, isn't it? It's writing a book isn't an easy short task, and
Not at all.
it's an all-consuming experience. So yeah, you'll find something.
Yeah. Yeah, focusing in general. I don't know if you're experiencing this in 2026, but just staying focused on something without like needing distractions has just been very hard this year. So
I've got a mix of that. Some of it is like I literally again, it's similar to you. I'm like, what is the point? Sometimes. But then I find I then get overwhelmed and then really sink myself into something to the point where I like forget to use the bathroom and things like that. I don't pee myself, but like it's just I become so focused on that one thing. And then if somebody tries to distract me, I find that absolutely infuriating. I don't like that. So I have to do that alone usually, or put a sign on the door that says "fuck off." Goodness. But yeah, I'm glad that art exists, and I'm glad that we're all able to have access to it because it's a very accessible thing. Writing, and I mean, even if it's I know some people struggle to write because of things like dyslexia and stuff like that, but there are so many tools out there now that you can work towards something, or maybe you can paint or whatever the thing is that you like doing. But I feel like everybody needs to have a form of art that they work on.
yeah, I
Regardless.
absolutely
Yeah.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's vital for tapping into a really important part of yourself
Mhm.
that isn't based on like what society has built and what society thinks you should do. I mean, it's just so integral on some really deep level of just being a person and
Mhm.
having emotions and experiences and being free to just be crazy and unbridled in some capacity in life.
Mhm. Yeah, it's the perfect vehicle for rebellion that doesn't include like a social backlash.
Right.
Well, not always anyway. Sometimes
Or
it does.
no risk of prison time from writing things in a book, at least the kind of fiction I write. I guess you could get in trouble, but
Depends if you've got a publisher or not, I suppose, because that helps. So that helps me kind of segue onto a question that I had. So you are traditionally published, and I assume you have been for your novels from the beginning. Did you ever consider going down a self-publishing route, or was that not an option at the time?
people ask me that, and especially because I did come from the world of film and I knew
Mhm.
so many people who were writing screenplays.
Mhm.
And so many screenwriters said to me, they're like, why don't you just turn one of your screenplays into a novel and put it up on Amazon? And I'm like, well, that's not what I want to do.
Mm.
So there was that aspect of it that I did really want to learn how to write a novel.
Mhm.
And there was also, I understood that there is an investment involved in self publishing, that if
Mhm.
you're going to do it well, you really do need to pay some other people, for copy editing or for a cover or to
Mhm.
pay for things for promotion. And at the time when I was first writing novels, I mean, I had nothing. I had
Mhm.
no money at all. There wasn't a dollar to put into doing that. So it was never a consideration because I
Mhm.
just felt like I couldn't afford to even consider it. So it's like
Interesting.
I needed them to pay me.
Mhm.
I was poor.
That'll do it. Was it a particularly long period of time for you to sell your work?
Well, I think like probably everybody who creates something, like
Mm.
when you create something, you have such immense pride, like, oh my God, I made this thing. And you don't necessarily understand how does this thing fit into the commercial world. And I know I've been guilty for almost every single thing I've ever written, want to start querying agents with like everything I've ever written.
Mhm.
So I did query, like, as I said, Baby Teeth was the sixth book I'd written. It
Mhm.
was the fifth book I'd queried. So it's like I did
Wow.
query all of my other books except for one.
Wow.
Um, in a certain way, I feel like it didn't take me as long as it takes some people. I
Mhm.
mean, really, it was just over 4 years
That's not
from the
too
point,
bad.
I know, from the point of
Mm.
starting to write novels and getting an agent.
Mm.
And that's really not too bad.
Yeah.
Um, I really didn't help myself in terms of querying all of those books, but I totally understand the instinct of why every writer puts their stuff out there before it might be ready.
Mhm.
For you, it might be the best thing you've ever written.
Mhm.
For your experience, that's absolutely true.
Mhm.
And then it meets the hard, cruel world.
Well, it's such a game of chance a lot of the time, and I do speak to a mixture of writers, but a lot of them are self-published, and I think the ultimate for most of them is to get representation or to have their books in certain stores and things like that, and I just want that for everybody. I just want everybody to achieve their dreams and stuff, but it's not that easy. It's really cutthroat,
Not,
and
not.
yeah, I think d have you had to compromise much of your work, um, to fit the needs of the industry and, like, sellable things?
I mean, that it's a little tricky
Mm.
because I have not compromised the things that I write,
Mm.
but I also have had an increasingly hard time selling my books and getting
Interesting.
published.
Hmm.
So, from the perspective of traditional publishing,
Mhm.
if you go back to Baby Teeth, it would have been a lot easier for traditional publishing if I had just written domestic horror forever.
Hmm.
If I had just written things about domestic, troubled families or disturbed children, they would have been like, wow, we know exactly what lane to put you in. Here's your lane. They would have been thrilled.
Yeah.
So I have not compromised, but I do feel like it has made my task, my life a little bit harder.
Mhm.
But I don't know how to do it any other way. I don't want to write just one kind of thing. I want to explore all sorts of different kinds of people and different ideas. So,
Mm.
there's a pro and con to everything, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it must be such a delicate balance to be, firm in what you believe and to wanna actually enjoy the process of writing and telling stories, but also knowing that that's the thing that pays your bills. Like, that must be really hard.
It is really hard, but the thing that I think is most important, and I would say this to any writer,
Mm.
writing a book is so hard and getting published. It's all so hard. The
Mm.
only portion of that I think is genuinely enjoyable and that is 100% yours is the process of writing the book. So if you don't enjoy that, there's there's not going to be any part of it that's going to actually feel that good.
Mm.
So I absolutely have to love what I'm writing and why I want to write it, because that's the good part. I mean, that's going to be the part where I'm happy, like, oh, I'm creating something. This is so exciting. Because everything else that happens after that is completely beyond my control. And it might be soul crushing at times. I have no control over that. So I've got to just enjoy, I've got to own the part that I can fully own.
That's fantastic advice. Super duper. So this time has gone by so quickly. I always ask everybody the same 2 questions at the end of every show. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So the second to last question is, what does success look like to you as a writer?
Yeah. So, okay, this is just going to be a very materialistic, business-like answer.
Good. I need one of those.
But for me, literally, success is that I can keep writing and publishing and paying my bills. I mean, it's the best job I've ever had, but writing novels is my job. So I need to be able to keep doing it because I want to live here.
That's a good reason as any.
I don't want to lose my house. I like it here. So for me, that success is to be able to keep doing it and to get paid to do it. So.
Awesome. Thank you for being honest. Sometimes I ask people that question and I can see the cogs turning and they go, do I say the humble answer or the honest answer? And I appreciate the honesty, honestly. So my last question of the show is, if you could go back to when you were first writing fiction and novels and you were taking it super seriously, if you could give yourself any advice, what advice would you give?
You know, I'm a person that I learn lessons by doing things wrong and then learning things from them. And I know if I could go back in time and tell myself something, I would not have listened. Seriously, I wouldn't have. I would have been like, that's great, that works for you, but I'm just on my own path. It's really hard for me to know how to answer that, because I feel like part of the question is like, what would have made my life easier if I'd known it back then? I mean, maybe some aspects would have been easier if I'd understood how mercurial the traditional publishing world is. I had not really understood. Coming from the world of film, sort of the idea was if you got a small budget to make a film and you got to screen it somewhere, then the next time you get a slightly larger budget and you would be working your way up. And that's what I thought traditional publishing would look like. And that was not the case at all. And that was a shock to find that out. So maybe I would have tried to tell myself, hey, you know, you're just going to have to keep working just as hard for every book, because there isn't a trajectory like that. It's just like this. So.
Well, that was immensely helpful, to be honest.
Okay.
Hopefully that'll help someone else. But that's why I asked that question. It's not necessarily that I think that you'll be able to get in a time machine and go back in time and actually tell yourself anything. But, you know, there are people that watch the show, and it is largely writers, because that's just how it's happened, that I know take something from that. And if they're at whatever stage of the journey that they're at, I'm sure that it will help somebody. So
I hope so.
I'm sure it will.
Sometimes I feel like my honesty is too much and that it's going to discourage people. And I don't want that to ever be the case. But I also feel like there's a lack of transparency, especially in traditional publishing. And it's like, it's helpful if people have real information.
Yeah, I totally agree. There is this like mystical, unachievable, magical thing that people perceive traditional publishing to be. And I think a lot of, and this is just an observation, if I'm wrong, please correct me, but there is this assumption that, like, say, for example, you get paid in advance, then that you get this bunch of money and then the money just keeps rolling in. Whereas a lot of publishers I've noticed, they still don't have the budget to do like a massive tour or whatever. And that if you want to do a lot of the advertising, you got to pay for it yourself.
Wow. Yeah, a lot of it is on the shoulders of authors now. I mean, I think book tours are almost like a thing of history. Pretty much all the authors I know who are doing tours are pay for them themselves. So there's a lot that authors need to do on their own,
Mhm.
but it's still the best job I've ever had.
Yeah, of
But you
course.
need to keep in mind that just because something is your dream job
Mhm.
doesn't mean it's like all sunshine and rainbows and your life is perfect now. It just doesn't work that way. It's a great
Mhm.
job, but it's a job.
Yeah, exactly. But at least it's something that you truly love, and not everybody can say that they do
Absolutely.
something they truly love. So I'm very happy for you. It's very cool.
Thank you.
But thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for answering my questions and letting me get to know you a little bit better. And I'm hoping that anybody that's watching will check out your work. I will put the links in the description below because you have to read. You have to read these books.
Well,
Okay.
thank you so much. It's been great talking with you. It's been a lot of fun.
Oh, I'm
We would be
glad.
friends if we lived in the same city, you know?
We can still be friends.
Oh, okay.
It's official. It's
Well,
official. That's what I say. Every person that comes on the show, I'm like, well, we're friends now, so that's what's happening.
ideal. That's great.
Excellent. If only life was as easy as that. You just get someone on your podcast. Now you're friends. It's fine.
That's great.